Congratulations, you finally raised a big round of money for your startup. Whether it's a Series A or a big seed round, you got there. But what are you going to do with that money to keep your investors happy? That's what this video is all about. Hello, I'm Roland Siebelink and I'm the founder and CEO of Midstage Institute, as well as a certified unicorn guide. At Midstage Institute, we help tech ventures like yours fix the most common growing pains between product market fit and product market dominance. And we do that very fast. Working with us, you'll get to a clear winning strategy, more aligned people and teams, more reliable execution, but also better ratios and runway, productive board relations, and ultimately you'll free yourself a lot more from the weeds of the day-to-day so that you can finally focus more on the future. If you want more information or want to see if you're a good fit, then just send us an email at ask@midstage.org. We're looking forward to hearing from you. So what are the 10 most important levers to pull as you bring your startup into hypergrowth mode now that you've raised your Series A? Now, the 10 levers to pull that are most important when you enter a hypergrowth mode are the following: conquering your target market and only your target market, boosting net revenue retention if you haven't done so yet, linking the GTM budget or what you want to spend on go-to-market to the payback time they can give you, shortening the path to value, and then creating an announcement cadence that ties the product and engineering organization together with the whole go-to-market organization. We'll talk about each of those, and also we'll be producing specific videos on each of those points in the coming weeks. So please keep an eye on the channel, subscribe here, and make sure you get the new videos right in your inbox. The most important thing after raising Series A is to really generate that hyper growth. That's what you raised your Series A for, after all. It's to show that explosive growth that investors expect. And this means the very first lever you have to pull is to set up to conquer your target market. Now, I say only your target market because a lot of startups make the mistake of trying to boil the ocean and trying to go after their entire total accessible market, total available market. That is actually wrong. That is only for the far future. How do you do that is you be very clear about your ideal customer profile. You get to a target list or target demographics to make sure you know who's in that target group and who's not and why they're not your customer yet. Then build enough capacity to actually reach and talk to all these customers, and more importantly, even set up win and loss tracking to understand why certain people in your ideal customer group are buying the product and why others are not. Now, if you've raised the Series A, then of course you had sizable sales going already, but it's also important to not let these land into a leaky bucket. That's why lever 2 is to boost net revenue retention. So look at making sure you get more and more revenue out of those customers that you expensively acquired. So that means being much better at onboarding, making sure that everyone who bought the product is actually using it and happy with it. Then expanding, can this go into other teams, into more seats? And also referring, like can they actually get you introduced to other potential customers, to friends that might benefit from the product as well. And of course, the fourth is to upgrade folks from a basic level to maybe like an intermediate level or even an enterprise or a pro level. And then upgrading the product if you have different levels, and if you don't, then you should, of course, so that customers can spend ever more on your products after you've spent so much money acquiring them. And the final part around go-to-market levers is to make sure you spend enough on your go-to-market. Many companies, especially those with a project and engineering background among the founders, are quite stingy with not wanting to spend on marketing and sales. But we have to say that the most successful startups that we've seen have actually spent quite a lot on marketing and sales to make sure that that growth comes at the top quartile of the startups. And this is what makes you very investable. So that's why it makes sense. Now, does that mean overspend or spend without limit? Not in these times when there's not so much funding available. So the way to look at it is really not on how much you're spending in an absolute basis, but how quick is the payback. If you have a payback of 18 months, then it's much harder to spend all that much money on go-to-market. But if they can get it down to, like, say, 12 months, which is already really good, then all the money you spend now is actually going to return within 12 months in additional sales. So this is something to keep very much in mind, and this is typically how many of the most successful startups have been managed internally in understanding how much to spend on their go-to-market. Now you'll notice immediately that the first 3 levers of our Series A playbook are all around the go-to-market, and that's not by accident, because of course the main reason why you raise a Series A is to really boost that go-to-market. Investors do need to see growth. But that doesn't mean that any other department can just sit on their hands. For the product and engineering organization in particular, there's still a lot of work to do. And one of the levers we like to pull at this stage is look critically at your onboarding and understanding the value of your product before you sell it, before it is sold to the customer. This is just one maybe convoluted example, but not uncommon, where it makes it a lot of steps necessary for customers to actually experience what the product does and what the value is. What's the aha moment of why you would be using that product? It's very often possible to just re-engineer those steps towards a much shorter path towards that aha moment, or a much shorter path to value, so that the customer can experience it in just 1 minute of testing out the product and immediately sees the value that's being offered to them. And that's often the most important contribution that product can make right after raising a Series A. The other thing that product and engineering can really drive after Series A is to make sure there's standard cadence coming through to marketing and sales of new product features that can be announced. This announcement cadence is one secret of the best run startups as well as bigger tech companies in Silicon Valley, to make sure that not just is there like a siloed product organization that builds whatever is on the roadmap, but to make sure that those are actually grouped into releases and announcements, so that every month, every 2 months, every quarter, whatever the case will be, sales and marketing knows that this is the raw material they can work with to get new campaigns going, talk to customers once again, persuade them to upgrade, persuade them to expand, and so forth. So if product and engineering can just get their heads together around the roadmap and get to fixed releases, that can help a lot. And by the way, that doesn't mean that the release has to be predetermined up front. Very often it's completely normal to say we will have a release on April 1st. However, we will be 80% that this is in it. We have 10% chance that this is in it, but at the last moment we'll let you know what we actually delivered and what we didn't. The second thing that is important in the product and engineering organization is to start looking at their outputs as the key inputs to the marketing and sales organization. What that means is there's not just an abstract roadmap of all the features we'll deliver one day, but can we get those features together in a certain cadence so that every month, every 2 months, every quarter if need be, we have something to deliver to the go-to-market organization so that they can run their campaigns and their outreach all around that. This is one of the secret sources of a well-run tech company, to tie the product engineering organization together with the go-to-market organization and have everyone work together towards the growth of the company. And the third thing that we expect product and engineering teams to start working on a lot after Series A is to also start adding buyer features, not just user features, but also buyer features. Up to then, typically every startup has focused just on user features, but for many apps, as in B2B or sometimes even in B2C, as when parents buy apps for their children, it's important to also look at the buyer as a potential user of the platform. So the first and foremost feature definitely in B2B is an analytics dashboard. The buyer wants to see simply how much it's being used and how much value is being generated. And there's this meme in the SaaS scene that in the end every SaaS product needs a dashboard. Well, this is why. Second, it's things like user management, access controls, how much can they see? And then third, also like providing different billing options and especially different plans, which will help you target different segments in the market even more effectively. Very often a difficult thing to persuade the engineering organization of, but having more and more plans is also a way to attract different segments into the product and thereby generating more revenue overall. Now, an important lever we haven't mentioned yet is to grow the capacity of the team. And very often that equates to just recruiting, setting up a recruiting organization, getting many more people on board, which is of course a necessary step. But it's not just about recruiting, it's also about giving these folks clear guidance on what to do and how their role interacts with the role in another silo. And this is actually one of the formats we recommend, to do away with all the titles or even names on the organization chart and just say, like, what's the area? There's a head of every area at every level, right? And what does that person do? They turn A into B using Z, right? And so be very clear on the inputs you expect them to have, the outputs you expect them to produce, and what process they use to actually do that. And this is an example org chart, just a tiny excerpt, of course, of what the full org chart would look like. But giving people that very clarity of like what we really expect from you is to turn this raw material into this output, and that is how we'll measure your success, is a huge success driver for startups that otherwise hire tons of people and then don't tell them clearly what to do. And if you ran an orchestra and you would tell every instrument player exactly what to play, then that would be only one thing. They would have their roles very clear, but still the music would sound terrible unless you also provided the rhythm, like exactly when they need to play it. And that is very similar in a growing company. You have to provide the overall rhythm that everyone works with so that they know when to deliver their outputs, when we can check on results for the company, and also understand together why we didn't reach a result or why we overshot with a result. A typical rhythm that we will see has a cadence of all the way from annual strategy review down to quarterly workshops, monthly all hands, weekly management team meetings, probably the most important element on this slide, and then sometimes daily huddles and scrum meetings, just to get people on the same page. All designed to make sure that people bring their work together, that people can learn from each other, and that you accelerate that pace of learning and adaptation that is so important for a growing startup. Now, many startups also make the mistake of asking every team to define their own output. And then you get this jumble of outputs, a huge OKR sheet defining what they find most important, but it doesn't necessarily add up to the results that the board wants to see. For example, a brand marketer will say, okay, our key metric is brand equity, whereas in a B2B situation, really marketing should be about leads. This is really to be helped very easily by just getting benchmarks from your investors, and especially the success metrics you're supposed to deliver if you're going to be a top quartile startup. We all know that there are going to be aggressive ARR targets and this triple, triple, double, double, double mantra, but there's also other targets around customer acquisition payback, the magic number, and derived from that, of course, like what is the operating margin expected, ARR per employee, and therefore how many employees can you be expecting to hire with a certain revenue number in place. It's best to share these metrics openly with your team so that they can actually strive to reach those benchmarks rather than guessing what is expected of them. Now, one thing that definitely changes as you raise a big round is that you lose full board control. And that also means that the relationship with board members has to change. Whereas your investors were probably acting more like advisors before, now they've gained control, and so now they're likely to start acting more as supervisors, sometimes highly critical supervisors. And this is something you need to prepare for and turn your relationship with board members much more from a mentor-mentee relationship to an adult-equal relationship. What does that mean? You have to take control of the board logistics, right? Set agenda, set quarterly meetings, always the same agenda, just to be expected, but then also never actually deliver news during the board meeting. Make sure that you build plenty of trust by always sharing the board decks and all the stuff that is going to be discussed there before, one-on-one with every board member, so that they have a chance to ask questions there and so that you can answer those questions, if you cannot right away, in the board meeting itself. Also share even more upfront the business results. So one of the best tips I read is like get the business results out as soon as it's end of month or end of quarter, even if it's not fully vetted with accounting yet. Just get all those results to members on the dot, always on the first of the month. That'll build a lot of trust in that you just show clarity and transparency. And finally, don't take the role yourself, if you're the CEO, of presenting everything to the board and putting yourself in that inferior position. Instead, ask your executives to present more and more of what the business is doing, and then sit with the board together so that you can evaluate the executives together with the board in the closed session where those executives are no longer present. Those are just a few tips, but again, like with all the other tips we had here, we'll have a specific video on this particular topic as well. Just subscribe to the channel and you'll find them in your inbox. So in conclusion, here are the 10 levers to pull in hypergrowth mode, to pull your company towards hypergrowth mode. There were 3 in the growth machine: scalable customer acquisition, successful onboarding, and then retention and referral. 3 also in product market fit refinement, to refine the core offering in line with what customers really need, get that cadence of announcements going, and go to market features for the buyers. In talent capacity, we looked at very clear team roles and handovers, but also execution rhythms. And then in the runway stretch, we looked at managing to metrics and getting productive or adult board relationships in place. First of all, for your growth machine, make sure that you work towards that scalable customer acquisition, that you have successful onboarding and retention and referral in place. On the products and engineering side, it's really about product market fit refinement. What does that mean? Refine your core offering, especially shorten that path to value, get to that cadence of announcements, and then also build go-to-market features, or what we call buyer features, not just user features. On the talent capacity side, it's important to not just hire people, but also to define very clearly every team's role as well as every team's handover, and then to make sure that you have these dependable execution rhythms in place so that everyone also knows when decisions are being taken, when something is to be delivered, and so that everyone works in sync. And finally, on stretching the runway and staying in control, it's really about managing to the metrics that the board expects in the first place and being open about these metrics to your executives. And second, to build productive and more adult, equal board relations than maybe what you've been used to in the past so far. So I hope you've enjoyed this video with this quick overview. Of course, we will have more detailed videos available for each of those topics. So again, please subscribe and find them in your in-tray. And then there's a bonus tip or a bonus lever that you definitely want to pull as you grow your Series A startup, which is do not reinvent the wheel. Or in other words, seek advice from experienced people where you can. Even if your board members themselves are not going to be so much advisors to you anymore and say, well, you just have to figure it out, that doesn't mean you have to come up with every answer all by yourself. There's tons of experienced startup people out there who've gone through this multiple times, maybe even have been at 3 unicorns like I have, and we're happy to help you with going through all those problems that you face, often for the first time, whereas we've done it many times before. And we definitely recommend that you do that in one way or the other, through advisors, through consultants, coaches, etc. Get other people to mirror your opinions with, so that you can actually learn from the best and speed up your learning and your execution as well. And if you want to get your tech company back on the right track, then you can go check our website, www.midstage.org. Then check our website for surveys, follow-up videos, including the 10 videos that we're going to be producing about all of these 10 topics we discussed today. So look at our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll find everything in your feed as it becomes available. Thank you so much for listening, and we're looking very much forward to hearing from you.